Welcome, my brother. This is Davey. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. I'll get to the point. Truck drivers strike. That's right. Another strike they're going to try to stage. And I'm going to tell you why this can't work out, okay? Look, here on the main news portals of the mainstream media, portals like Poder 360 Veja, Gazeta do Povo, UOL, they're all saying the following. Truck drivers leader says there will be a strike on Monday. In other words, when you're watching this video, the truck drivers strike would be starting. On Veja, truck drivers strike. The group threatens to stop if the freight measure isn't voted on. Gazeta do Povo, the truck drivers leader advises starting the strike at the start of Monday. So it will be from Monday to Tuesday in this case. Association threatens truck drivers strike if the Senate doesn't vote on the measure. It's the same thing. Let's go. Let's break this down, family. Is diesel expensive? Yes. Following a trend across the whole country, everything is very expensive. Notice we've hit the limit, but many still don't see it. Why doesn't welfare work anywhere in the world? Does it cause much more trouble than it actually helps? Cooking gas has become so expensive they made a gas voucher. That's absurd. Have you ever thought about that, my brother? The guy works, he hustles, and things are so tough that he can't even afford the gas he needs to cook his food. Look at how bad it's gotten. Truck drivers don't have a leader, my brother. That's the biggest mistake in those mainstream media reports. The truck drivers' leaders. Truck drivers don't have a leader. Truck driver, as they themselves like to say, right? My truck driver friends say, Davi, we're free spirits. The truck driver, the real deal, right? That guy who bought his own truck. He doesn't like having a boss telling him what to do, man. If he doesn't like you, he simply won't take the haul. He's the master of his own life. You get it? The guy already lives out in the world taking all these risks because he likes freedom, so he doesn't have a leader. There's no leader at all. That's where the mistake starts. That strike that worked out in 2018, right? If I'm not mistaken, it worked because it was something spontaneous. A lot of people saw how absurd it was and said, let's get together. But unfortunately, since the population didn't support it in large numbers, was there a lot of support? There was. But a good part of the population went to fight over gas taxes just to end up paying 10 reais per liter of fuel. That was back then. So that served for the government at the time, in this case Michel Temer, to shield itself from a possible new strike. And that's what he did. Several laws were created. We can't sit here being reckless and accusing anyone or any institution of crimes without having proof of it. But a lot of people have complained, and I can say that because it's a fact, it's news. A lot of people have been talking, right, about, let's put it this way, the political capture of our institutions, right? For example, the federal government and the gods of Olympus appear closely aligned, right? Our Supreme Federal Court also seems closely aligned. And what does that mean for a strike? It means, my brothers, that if the government doesn't agree, and obviously it won't agree with the strike, because that would hurt them even more and increase this crisis, right? He issued a provisional measure to subsidize, right? And that's what they're fighting for. They want it to be approved quickly. But my brothers, it's a snowball effect. It won't help at all. They're going to subsidize it, but things will just get more expensive. It won't work. That's not the way to go. People just say, I only care about what's good for me. And thinking like that, everyone ends up getting screwed together. But let's move on. The government doesn't want a strike to happen. So they go to the gods of Olympus and say, look, declare this strike unconstitutional. So what's the effect of that, Davey? If the gods of Olympus look at this strike and say, okay, it's illegal, they decide it's illegal. Hey, Davey, don't we have the right to strike? Only if the gods of Olympus allow it. If they get involved in the matter, that is, if you're doing something against the government, in this case, which is protected by them, which sides with them, they will declare your strike illegal because they already have that precedent. And that happened during Michel Temer's time, right? That's when it was authorized, and I even made reports explaining that the truck drivers weren't running away with their tails between their legs. They weren't being cowards, as some people tried to label them. The truck drivers were leaving because it became impossible to continue the strike. Fines were authorized. The Federal Highway Police had the authority to impose fines up to the value of the trucks themselves. So, you were there with your truck stopped, it could be fined up to the value of the truck. Several companies went bankrupt, they sent 3, 4, 5 trucks, sent the whole fleet they had, and got screwed. Others got screwed too. Because, my brothers, they had already been there for many days, they needed the people, the support of the people. And that made the public doubt whether that strike was some desperate left-wing effort to stay in power. And finally, to make it completely impossible, right? For the guys to keep the strike going, the use of lethal force was authorized against those who insisted on continuing to block the road. We see MST doing this all the time, right? Vandalism, even buses, they burned everything. That never happened. But when it was the workers, I mean the truck drivers, that was legalized. I even showed it to the police officers, begging for God's sake that the guys leave so the police wouldn't have to carry out the orders they had. But those were their orders. If the truck drivers insisted on staying in the way, lethal force would be used. So taking into consideration these points that I pointed out to you, right? Truck drivers don't have a leader. The government protected itself since that time, creating laws and legal precedents so it could act if something like that happened again. Given the country's situation, the rigged system, and what I've said, do you think this strike can succeed, family? A lot of people keep insisting on this, right? Because they want to get views, right? They want to get likes. But honestly, family, I'm sorry. Honestly, I don't like to go down that path. I like to be real with you. There's no way there can be a strike. Exactly because of what was done. It's not going to be like that. The people are still very resentful about everything that happened, right? Yeah, many truck drivers, in fact, don't agree with this strike. And it's getting harder and harder to find a truck driver who actually owns his own truck. Most of the fleet today belongs to transport companies. And what does that mean? As I already told you, the transport companies also have contracts to honor. They need to respect the rules of this contract, so they won't authorize it of their own free will, taking their trucks off the road. Because some people say that, Davi, but why doesn't everyone just stop? Everyone stays home and that's it? That doesn't happen. Because there would have to be consensus, right? It would have to be agreed upon by everyone. Both those who have their own truck and those who work for a company. To come to that conclusion, that line of thinking, look, we need to stop because we can't go on anymore. That doesn't happen. Like I said, because the transport companies have their contracts. If they miss the deadline, they'll be fined. The truck driver who drives that truck, who is an employee, right, gets a salary there. He's not the owner of the truck. He's not, let's say, the old school owner-operator, right, the one who has his own truck. Someone might want to stop, but he can't, or he'll be fired and replaced by someone else. So what was the solution for that? It was to do as it was always done, right? The truckers would block the roads. Because when you talk about closing roads, folks, it's something that many times is kind of dirty. In some places, yes, the roads were closed. But in most of the country, the only thing being stopped from passing were the trucks themselves. So the guy was forced to join in, because that way the transport companies themselves had an excuse. Look, we didn't deliver because they're not letting us through. It's not our fault. We weren't the ones who stopped and didn't fulfill the contract because we're demanding some improvement for truckers as a group, right? So the business owner, he even wants to, take part in this strike, but he can't because of these contracts. That's how everything works, right? Even his clients are big companies. Just imagine everything is transported by trucks. So let's say the guy who's delivering to the wholesale store, how is the transport company going to say, no, I'm going to join the strike and not deliver? You get it, folks? So there's that side of it too. When it was blocked, truck drivers wouldn't let you through. Only small cars, passenger cars, and emergency vehicles could pass, right? Emergency trucks are carrying like oxygen, medicine, medication, right? Perishable goods. Those were getting through. The rest can't get through. With that, everyone, all classes could unite. That's why people don't get it. Hey, Davey, I think everybody just had to stay home. My brother, I also think everyone should stop committing crimes and work, live off the sweat of their brow, but it's not how we want it. That's the reality. So, yes, it was necessary to stop the trucks on the road and say, look, nobody passes. But unfortunately, that's not possible because even the shoulder of the road nowadays is considered part of the roadway too. And it's allowed. I showed it to the police themselves. Go back to the old videos, okay? I'm not going to repeat it here, all right? They've already said the parking lot of gas stations is also considered part of the roadway. If you park your truck there, you'll also get fined. And the use of lethal force will be authorized if the person insists, right? And stays parked there. It's the same thing with the shoulders. They're also considered part of the roadway. So, my brother, with this legal precedent we have, with the political capture of the state today, right? The powers they have today, forget about the strike, okay? This is nonsense. I'm just saying this to make you aware. It's not going anywhere. There might be a handful, there might be some union leaders, that's what there is, right? Like this crybaby here, trying to be the leader, but he's not a leader of anything, of nothing at all. The truck drivers already said. Like my truck driver friends say, man, they're wild, they don't want leadership, right? If there was consensus, the warriors would definitely stop. But with this population, right, willing to fight to pay, I think if there was another one at that level, they'd pay up to 30 rays per liter without a problem, right? It's only good for the system to run tests, right? And say, look, they're willing to pay even those amounts, so fuel is actually cheap. That's it, my brothers. Anyway, right? I want to thank you for tuning in, and what I can do to give back is to tell it like it is without beating around the bush. That's what's happening, all right, family? What might happen at most is some inconvenience, in my opinion. Now, if it does happen, I'm not someone who can see the future or anything like that, right? It's the facts themselves, the rules as they are, that show me this. If it happens, we'll come back here and share the facts with you, but because of the current circumstances, I think it's very unlikely, all right? But if there is, we'll be coming back. Yeah, a lot of people rush to fill up their vehicles, but honestly, this time, I think that's nonsense, family, honestly. Right? God bless you, brothers. Hugs, we're in this together.